As part of the America Competes Act, an innovation advisory board was formed. Abby Joseph Cohen of Goldman Sachs sits on that board, which just issued its first report to Congress. She joins us now. Abby, thanks so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
What is that board doing, and what has surprised you most that you found out?
What we have done, I'm very pleased to say, is a very thorough review, not just of what we can do, but very importantly, we have started with a review of what has gone wrong. You know, the United States was by far the world's most innovative and productive economy, and we tried to take a very clear-headed look at whether we're still in that position, and if not, what can we do going forward.
Well, what is the biggest sort of quick fix, if you will, out there to create jobs? Because there are certainly long-term solutions, but what about in the near term?
We have to understand that sometimes the quick fixes are not what we should be focusing on, because quick fixes are just that. The thing that we have done as a nation very successfully is to be innovative. We have focused on research. We have focused on things that really could take many years for fruition. You know, you just think about some of the investments made by the United States in the 1950s and 60s, things that ultimately led to semiconductors, the internet, and of course some of the extraordinary space-age materials that we all benefit from right now. When those investments were made, it wasn't quite clear that they would be commercial successes or would help create jobs, but they certainly have.
Would it be appropriate policy now at this point then to invoke more stimulus? I mean, we're at a point where we're trying so desperately to reduce the amount of debt that this country holds, but is this a time for more stimulus aimed at sparking that innovation?
In my view, that's what the history would suggest, that on a short-term basis, too much focus on the deficit leads to paltry economic growth. Indeed, one of the best ways and fastest ways to get out of a short-term deficit problem is to allow the economy to grow, more people become employed, they pay more in taxes, corporations do better, they pay more in taxes, and of course there's less need for additional government stimulus. The long-term deficit problem, of course, is something that we must deal with head-on, and this involves, for example, the aging of the baby boomers, and what happens when many of those baby boomers hit retirement age and become entitled to Social Security and Medicare, and it's particularly Medicare, which is not properly funded. That is the long-term deficit problem for the United States.
Abby, I wonder how much the bottom falling out of the middle class concerns you when it comes to innovation. And I ask because if you have more and more middle class families sort of losing ground, you have the likelihood that many of the children won't go to colleges necessarily. There will be an issue with paying for education. So long term here, what impact could the bottom falling out of the middle class have on innovation? Or do you think that that's a stretch?
It's so important that you've raised that problem because it is indeed a major problem. It's something that we at Goldman Sachs have been working on for the past few years, and it is addressed in the new report on competitiveness and innovation. Even before the credit crisis and the severe recession which followed, we found that the middle class in the United States was falling somewhat behind. This is something we haven't seen in a long, long time, but the median family income fell by 4 to 5% adjusted for inflation in the decade before the credit crisis. We believe a good deal of this is related to the sorts of jobs that people were taking and the lack of preparation for the higher quality jobs. And again, I don't necessarily mean college education, but rather solid vocational training as well. And this is something that is a problem. You know, the American dream is all about upward striving, people working hard, and trying to ensure an even better education and an even better set of opportunities for their children. And it's something on which we simply cannot relent. This is something that has to be a #1 priority for all of us.